Hey guys, welcome again to Art Piece Projects. I hope you're enjoying this series of lessons that we're creating for the isolation period. Today we're going to be looking at the artist Georgia O'Keeffe, who was a beautiful artist who painted amazing abstracts in around the 1920s. So Georgia O'Keeffe's paintings have a lot of qualities that you explored last week, the blending from one color to another softly. Zooming in on the flowers, she was able to create these beautiful organic fluid shapes, and she was kind of like a master of the idea of space and the space around objects. Artists call that negative space, but it's not really very negative. We look at this photo and we slowly emphasize the negative space or the spaces around the object. We can see that if we arrange them just so, they can become a really beautiful part of the painting itself. So it's just not just empty space, but something active and that contributes to the composition or the design of the artwork. Now this is one I've chosen to use today, zooming in pretty close, but these are some other options that you might want to have a look at, or maybe have a look on the internet and see what else you can find. So I found this photo. I think it's very nice with lots of delicate lights and darks, deep darks. So I'm showing you here how to create a palette at home that's easy to clean up. So just cutting out a circle out of Glad Bake, spray your plastic plate with a fine mist, stick the Glad Bake on top, and then when it comes time to clean up in the end, you'll be glad you did that. So mixing these colors, we're starting off with the red and the purple. The whites will give you the delicate tones, the lights. Now I'm finding 1/3 from the left, 1/3 from the top, and that big rose basically sits at the bottom right corner just there, and then the other one at the top kind of overlaps that as well. Have a bit of a scribble here, but it doesn't really matter. I'm just kind of figuring out where things go. For the light coloured rose, I'm also mixing some yellows, and then for the deep colours it's the red and green combined, so they make a good shadow colour. That's for the negative spaces or the empty spaces around the roses, around the flowers. So now I'm just going to basically use a light colour to put in the outlines of where roughly the petals go. It's not exact. Then I start with a medium tone color. It's just a red and purple mixed together. When I want to get the really dark colors, I go back again to that idea of mixing the opposite colors together, the red and the green. So it's like mixing the stoplights together. They cancel each other out and get really dark. I mix that chromatic black with the purple on one side of the palette, and on the other side of the palette I kind of mix it with a bit of white. So I've got lights and darks. So you can see my palette looks like this kind of horseshoe shape with the whites and lights on one side and the darks on the other, but the main colours is kind of at the top. It goes down both sides. That's really handy because then I've got all the colours I need for this section just ready to go. So starting by blocking in the lights, then the midtones, and then I'm starting to put in some of the darks, the deep dark shadows, and just keep on filling it in. Pretty much like what we did last week in last week's exercise. If you did that exercise, you'll find this week a lot easier because it was kind of like a practice of this technique. Essentially putting down the tones that you need on them all together. So here's the most important parts. If you watch this bit, I've got a medium tone, I've got some dark tones at the bottom. All these paints are wet at the same time. I'm not trying to do the whole painting all at once, just one little section. Put in a bit of dark, all those paints are wet. And I'm just working on this one little bit. And I put in the lights, so I've got the darks, the medium tones, which is just the normal colour, and then I've got the highlights, and they're all wet at the same time. Then I've got in this case I've got a bit of a flat brush. You could use any kind of soft brush. And then what I do is basically blend those tones together. Then I go off and work on another section. Start putting in some darks, some mediums, and blend it together. Not every section has very bright highlights. When you've got a dark object, the shadows tend to be dark and the highlights tend to be also not that bright. But you want to pop in a few contrasting parts so that it will pop out a bit more. If you look up close, you can see the painting's actually quite wet, and that's because you need the acrylics to be wet, with the colours all wet next to each other to be able to blend them. So now what I'm doing here is just see how much I'm cleaning my brush. Always, every time my hand goes out of the shot, a lot of the time I'm actually cleaning the brush or just wiping it on a rag. So then what I do is I come back and I blend a little bit more with the clean brush, one colour into another. And little bit by little bit, the form starts to become softer, rounder. All those tones join together and you start to get a bit of depth. I might pick out the highlights again just to make them pop. I can leave them like that because it's got a stronger contrast, or I can try to blend them back in a little bit as well. It's really a matter of taste, and the same with the chunkiness of the paint. If you like chunky paint, you could just leave it like that. If you want it to be smooth, you just keep on blending it. So that's our basic compositions shaping up now. So when I've wanted to draw in the shapes of the big light rose, I've had to come and chop out a few bits out of that initial egg shape. So so I've thrown away the palette there, got a new palette, and then I'm mixing again what I'd call the mother color. It's the orangey color, and mixing it down with a bit of purple on one side so it gets darker, and then the orangey color with the white, so it's the red and yellow, then with the white, and then I get this light tone. Just gonna scribble in some basic shapes where I think they're going to go. They're really not accurate. I haven't really worried about it too much. Just got the main lines of basic ideas. Start to pop in a few areas in very, very light shadow. I don't want to get too carried away because it's actually a bit hard to paint over top of the dark colors if you put them in too early. So then I just slowly build up towards the darker colors. If you're using oil paints, it'd be completely the other way around. But with acrylics, I find it's just a lot easier to put down a mid-tone base, then work towards the darks, just because it's a lot easier to paint darks over light than lights over darks. So here I've added also a little bit of purple into the mix, into that peachy color. I get this nice dusty rose color, and that's going to come in handy too, but it's not necessary. Picking up the highlights again. Redefining the darks and the highlights. It's a kind of a game of push and pull. Redefining the lights and darks. Tend to lose it all a little bit. Now, if you've got that far, you could probably just leave it if you're a beginner, just leave it right there. If you are a bit more advanced or you want to really push it and maybe give yourself a bit of a headache, you can carry on. Just so what this is a kind of a process that's common in a lot of art techniques where you paint something, then you kind of lose it a little bit. The trade-off is that you get a little bit more subtlety. So it's the process of losing and finding, losing something, redefining it. You'll find the subtlety is a lot greater in the blending there. This sort of technique you can see in Gerhard Richter, a German painter, or the Mona Lisa, for example. Have a look at the hands or the subtlety of tones on the face. So, oops, that's a horrible sound. Turn that down. So we're redefining the darks, redefining the lights. This also helps us to kind of redraw the contours as well, so it's not a bad thing at all. It's just pretty time consuming, and if you already like the freshness of the strokes, then not much point. So in the last part, I've just remade that really dark color of red and green mixed together, the chromatic black, and I've just come in with these touches of chromatic black, which is basically a color mixed black, and then that's basically what we've got. So I hope you have enjoyed this lesson. Don't worry if it doesn't look exactly like this, especially if you're a beginner. I've been doing this stuff for a very long time. So my best advice for you is just enjoy the process. Just remember that art is not a race. The painting is not a race. There's no big hurry to learn everything all at once. Looking at something and drawing it's not a competition. It can just be a beautiful way to engage in the world around you and enjoy being conscious and feeling. Similarly, making an artwork just about how you feel, or the sensations you have, or the dreams, or whatever you experience is another form of experience of being alive that we can share with other people. So just enjoy the journey, and I hope you've enjoyed this today. I hope you've got something out of it, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.